Alrighty, folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel, or welcome to my YouTube channel. I am the real Cass Perry, and today we are going to be talking about something that I'm going to be completely honest is a little bit confusing for most likely everybody. So, bear with me here. Just bear with me because we're going to talk about it. This entire stream is just to conversate. Okay. Alrighty. So today's topic is, well, I'm going to be honest here. I was introduced to this one by a Blair White video, and I really do look up to Blair White as a creator. I'm going to be totally open about that one. That is something that I can honestly say I will not be denying at any point in time soon. So what we are discussing today is a little bit, I don't really know exactly what to think about it because it's a very different type of topic. So a young man, I'm going to say young man specifically to be respectful of their preferred pronouns, has come out with their story about transitioning with cerebral palsy. Now, a lot of people are sincerely upset about this, and I understand why they are upset about this. I really do. And I can also see that this person, there is a possibility that this is not disabled abuse. However, there's also a huge possibility that it most definitely is. And yeah. So, a transgender teen with cerebral palsy who went viral after posting about his breast removal surgery has told thedailymail.com that he knew what he was doing and is happy with his choices. Micaiah Leroy, who is a 19-year-old University of Minnesota student, had a double mastectomy last month and shared footage about the procedure and his painful but swift recovery on Instagram. These videos exploded on the conservative social media on Thursday, with critics calling Micaiah a victim who should not have been green-lighted for transition surgery because of his disability. But speaking with the Daily Mail, Micaiah said that he had a long history of gender identity issues and that he is glad that he provoked a reaction because he wanted to blow up the internet. Micaiah raises tough questions about whether disabled people and minors should be allowed to take puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones and undergo sex change operations. Micaiah's disability, cerebral palsy, affects movement and muscle control. He is able to speak and write for himself, and he gets straight A's at college and is involved in state politics. I am making these decisions, said Micaiah. I am my own legal guardian, and people don't understand that. Now, I have watched the videos myself, and we are going to watch the videos as well. But we're also going to continue reading about Micaiah, and yeah. Because there's a reason that I'm just a teensy-weensy tiny bit skeptical about whether or not this was actually Micaiah's choice to undergo these surgeries, if he is actually a young trans man, or if he was manipulated into thinking that this is the case. And I personally cannot come to any type of really, I can't come to any kind of a reason why I think either or. Micaiah's case raises tough questions about whether disabled people and minors should be allowed to take puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones and undergo sex change operations. Micaiah's disability, cerebral palsy, affects movement and muscle control. He is able to speak and write for himself and gets straight A's in college, and he is involved in state politics. We are going to look into the research for that just a little bit because children who have cerebral palsy, we're going to go to the Mayo Clinic for this one. Cerebral palsy is a group of conditions that affect movement and posture. It is caused by damage that occurs to the developing brain and most often before birth. Symptoms appear during infancy or preschool years and vary from very mild to very serious in conditions. Children with cerebral palsy may have exaggerated reflexes. The arms, legs, and trunk may appear floppy, or they may have stiff muscles known as spasticity. Symptoms can also include irregular posture movements that cannot be controlled, a walk that is not steady, or some combination of these. Cerebral palsy may make it hard to swallow. It can also cause eye and muscle imbalance in which the eyes do not focus on the same object. People with the condition might have a reduced range of motion in their joints due to muscle stiffness. The cause of cerebral palsy and its effect on the function vary from person to person. Some people with cerebral palsy can walk while others need assistance. Some people have intellectual disabilities. Remember that one. Some people have intellectual disabilities. Doesn't mean that they're stupid, means that they have an intellectual disability. They're not dumb, they're disabled. I'm disabled. I have intellectual disabilities, and you know what? I'm running around like everything's fine. So I'm pretty smart for a dumb person. Anyway, but others do not. Epilepsy, blindness, or deafness also might affect some people with cerebral palsy. There is no cure, but treatments can help improve function. The symptoms of cerebral palsy may vary during the child's development, but the condition doesn't get worse. The condition generally stays the same over time. Symptoms of cerebral palsy can vary greatly in some people. Cerebral palsy affects the entire body. In other people, symptoms might only affect one or two limbs or one side of the body. General symptoms include trouble with movement and coordination, speech and eating development, and other issues. Movement and coordination, you're going to see stiff muscles, exaggerated reflexes known as spasticity. This is really common. This is the most common movement condition related to cerebral palsy. Variations in muscle tone, such as being either too stiff or too floppy, stiff muscles with regular reflexes known as rigidity, lack of balance and muscle coordination known as ataxia. I have a baby cousin who has an extremely mild form of CP, and it only affects her balance and such. She is extremely smart. She is extremely intelligent for her age. She's Yeah, it literally just affects her sight and her balance. And other than that, she is one of the most advanced young girls ever. So, once again, depending on how severe Micaiah's condition is and whether or not he has the different types of intellectual disorders and such that can come with cerebral palsy, depends upon whether or not what a lot of people are thinking is going on is correct. Speech and eating. So people with cerebral palsy will have delays in speech development. They'll have trouble speaking, trouble with sucking, chewing, or eating, drooling, or trouble with swallowing. Some children with cerebral palsy may have symptoms related to development, as in delays in reaching motor skills milestones and setting up crawling. Learning, they may have learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities, delayed growth growth, resulting in smaller size than would be expected, which does happen with a lot of youngins who have cerebral palsy. Some of them have have like a shorter or longer leg than the other. Some have like a shorter arm than they should. That is something that happens very commonly. Other symptoms that damage to the brain can contribute to other neurological symptoms such as seizures, which are a symptom of epilepsy. Children with cerebral palsy may be diagnosed with epilepsy. They may have trouble hearing, trouble with vision changes, eye movement, pain, or trouble with feeling sensations such as touch, bladder and bowel issues, including constipation and urinary incontinence, mental health conditions such as emotional conditions and behavioral issues. Now, the emotional conditions and behavioral issues are what we are going to focus on for the question of whether or not it is a possibility that this person's caretaker system and or parental system could possibly be abusing them and using and abusing them because they have a disability and using them to get attention for the trans rights movement, which I'm going to be completely honest, real trans people have already had rights for a really long time. As far as I know, there isn't really anybody who just doesn't accept trans people for who they are. As far as I know, I'm not actually sure. The only thing that I'm aware of that anybody has ever had a problem with when it comes to trans people is them messing with the kids. And that is like literally medically transitioning children, which shouldn't be happening in the first place. They're babies. Don't mess with their bodies. Wait until they're full grown, and then they can make the decision whether or not they're going to mess with their bodies. Leave them alone. But this is a disabled person. And a lot of people who have cerebral palsy also have developmental delay disorder, which means that they're going to be multiple years younger in their brain than they actually are in real life. So this dude could be 19 years old right now in real life, but in his brain, he could mentally be like 8 or 9 years old and still have like intelligent speaking patterns and stuff, because there are 9-year-olds that are pretty intelligent when it comes to these types of things. But we also shouldn't be leaving these types of decisions for a 9-year-old to, you know what I mean? Like, anyways, we'll go back to over here. Micaiah said, according to the Daily Mail, Micaiah said that he is making these decisions and that he is his own legal guardian and that people don't understand that. This poor sweet, oh my lord. Micaiah can speak on his own, but was aided in his interview by his mom, Kathy Leroy, who was effectively translating his words. Not to be the person who feels like they need to say this, but if this person needs a translator, if they're not deaf and they need a translator, if they do not speak a different language and they need a translator, they're not translating what this child is saying. I'm sorry, but there is no possible way. He says that he came out at age 14 during the pandemic. 14? He was still a baby when his home city, Minneapolis, was convulsed by protests over the police killing of George Floyd. He says that he always knew something was up with his gender identity, but that his decision was accelerated by joining a group of mostly LGBTQ teenagers. He was indoctrinated. This was indoctrination. This may raise concerns about Micaiah's choices, as critics have warned of a social contragon. Yeah, of peer pressure driving a sharp uptick in the number of trans adolescents. That is a real thing. I'm sorry. This was even a thing when I was in high school. In 2000 and oh god, what year was it? 2010, between the years between 2012 to 2016, 2017, between those years, we had what was called the Gay Straight Alliance. And the Gay Straight Alliance very quickly, within a year, became the LGBTQ Alliance. And within that year, they immediately started trying to tell every little girl who was a tomboy at my high school that they were trans. They were also trying to tell every little boy at our every little girl who was a tomboy at our high school, automatically, you're trans now, because our teacher who was running the GSA, the Gay Straight Alliance, was all like, oh, well, if you're a girl and you like boy things and you like other girls, there's no possible way that you're just a lesbian who is very masculine. No, 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 you're a little trans boy. You're 11 years old, but you're trans. You're 12 years old, but there's no other option in your life. You have to be trans now. I literally watched this with my own eyes. I wish that I didn't. And I literally watched right after this girl was told this by this teacher. Within a week, 9 of her friends, all 9 of the girls in her friend group, were now saying that they were trans and they were boys and that they were no longer girls, and changing between a new boy name every other day. And then they grew out of it. As far as I know, most of them grew out of it. They didn't like stick into it. But at the same time, go ahead and try to tell me that this isn't pushed on kids in schools. Go ahead and try to tell me it wasn't that long ago that I was a kid in school and it was people were trying to push it on me. That was literally the point in time when I went through the phase where I was just like, oh, maybe I'm a boy. And I realized, no, I like my tits. And I'm not a boy. I'm bisexual. I just like everything. Doesn't matter. He charted his girl to boy transition. He charted his boy to girl to boy transition on Instagram as at disabled trans boy, from taking cross-sex hormones to age 17 to wearing chest binders. He underwent surgery last month, which he says was painful, but that he was mostly back to normal within a week. Minnesota is a trans refuge state iced by Democratic government Tim Walz, meaning that it was easier for Micaiah to get taxpayer-funded gender-affirming care than elsewhere. Okay, I can't wait to show you guys the video, because the videos are the reason why this upsets me, honestly. I mean, to be fair, if this young man is cognitively functioning enough to get straight A's in all of his college courses and fully be able to communicate for those, then there's no possible way that he isn't able to communicate to everybody around him what he actually feels and thinks, right? There's no way. No possible. Come on, tell me. Right? Right? Well, wrong. Because yes, cerebral palsy can affect your decision-making abilities, and children with cerebral palsy are... A child with cerebral palsy can be particularly vulnerable to psychological abuse due to their physical limitations, potential communication difficulties, which obviously Micaiah has. Once I show you the video, you'll definitely get that. And reliance on caregivers. The boy can't even sign his own name, so yeah. Making them unable to easily report or defend themselves against emotional manipulation or mistreatment. This can lead to significant mental health issues like anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem. And what is something that we already know that children tend to do when they are dealing with depression, low self-esteem, and anxiety? They tend to overcompensate with everything that everybody around them wants them to do, specifically so that they can try to fit in with everybody around them, specifically so that they feel like everybody around them loves them more. They think that it's going to make them happier to have everybody pay more attention to them, because they think that it's going to make them abused less often. Children who are victims of abuse typically just go with their abuse because they don't know anything else. They will literally go along with it. Specifically because they know that if they don't just go along with it, everything's going to get worse. Okay? That is what really happens with abused children, okay? And an abused person with cerebral palsy is absolutely no different than an abused child to me, especially if there's somebody who has like severe cerebral palsy with all of the intellectual disabilities, everything that goes with it. That is full on abuse. That is full on abuse. Now, his mother, Kathy, says that both parents supported his decision to transition, calling it a missing piece of his identity. Oh, right. Okay, we're going to get into this in a minute. Kathy, his mother, Miss Kathy Leroy, is what is known as a trans rights activist for trans children. And her and Micaiah's caretaker are parading this kid around like some sort of mascot for the trans community, and it's actually sickening because I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, anybody who is actually like, there are people who are actually affected by being trans who are literally not okay with this. What is happening when people are doing this is ugh. He studies hard. He is helped by about a dozen carers and hopes to become the first transgender congressperson with cerebral palsy in the U.S. House. Now, my question here is, he gets straight A's in university. He is apparently only able to communicate through communication devices and his caregivers. Question: how do we know that his caregivers are not mixing up everything that this kid wants to say? How do we not know? How do we know that his caregivers are not putting everything into into Micaiah's translation equipment and everything before they start the interviews? How do we know that Micaiah isn't saying something completely different than what they are translating it to? We don't know that. There's no possible way to really know that. That is my big thing on this one. Oh, and check this out. Mr. Jamie Dodger. I'm sorry, but Jamie fucking Dodger. I can't even. Ugh. Of course, Jamie Dodger would be involved with this. Oh my fucking god. The person who is fully okay with trans medicalization on children just because he fully thinks that children are 100% able to make any kind of decision and children understand everything that's going on at all times. No. Some kids don't always understand everything. Kids do not understand their own emotions until they start getting older. Their pituitary gland isn't fully formed. And Jamie Dodger, I'm sorry, but there are a lot of different things that I can agree with Jamie Dodger on, okay? Like, I don't think that anybody should ever be mean to somebody who is transsexual just because they're trans. You can be mean to a transsexual person because they're a dick face. You can't be mean to them just because they're trans. I can agree with a lot of different things and a lot of different messages that Jamie Dodger has, but when it comes down to the kids, let the children be children. Yes, let them identify as whatever they want to identify as, but we are not putting 5-year-olds on hormones just because they ask for it. That shouldn't be allowed. So the fact that he's friends with Jamie Dodger, who is a full-on trans activist, or they call it a trans activist, I don't really think that anybody who says that they're a trans activist should even be able to call themselves an activist. They're more like people who just scream and bitch on the internet and make absolutely no headway on anything. Aw, cute kid. Micaiah playing croquet as a girl. He says that he always knew something was okay, whatever. Like, look, she was such a cute little girl. Leave like, this poor little girl. This poor little boy. I don't even know what to say anymore. It doesn't matter. They're 19. To me, they're a child. It doesn't matter. In my mind, anybody who is under the age of 23 is a literal baby. They're a fetus. This is a fetus. This is what we're talking about right now. A literal fetus who had a double mastectomy and was put into surgery by their caregivers. Doctors in this cult, that's exactly what it is. It's a cult. Doctors in this cult don't care about disabilities, posted Elston. Quite the opposite. They transition a higher percentage of people with mental disabilities and camaraderies. Micaiah says that he had to switch off his Instagram notifications because his account was getting blown up by hateful comments. It isn't hateful towards you, Micaiah. Nobody, absolutely nobody, is ever going to say that there is anything wrong with you. You are a victim in this situation. I have all of the sympathy for this young boy. I have nothing but sympathy for Micaiah. Absolutely nothing. I have so much sympathy for this young man. And absolutely zero sympathy for the parents. And zero, no, zilch, absolutely no sympathy for the caretakers. Because the caretakers are the people who pushed this to happen in the first place. Because I'm sorry, but no self-respecting doctor is going to do that to somebody who can barely communicate on their own and not lose their job. I'm sorry, but that doctor should lose their fucking job. But he says that he is glad he got a reaction. I want to blow up the internet because I want to help other people who are trans and disabled know that it's okay. You know what? It is perfectly fine to be trans and disabled. It is 100% okay to be disabled and be a transsexual person. You can be both. It is always possible. But the thing is, I personally don't think that these are Micaiah's words. I really don't. I really don't. I'm sorry. I want people to keep their minds open and not be bigots. People with disabilities are able to do whatever they fudging want. I agree with that, but at the same time, if it's something that could potentially harm you physically and mentally, I don't know if we should let anybody do what they want if that is the case. I'm not saying that we shouldn't let people do what they want, but we shouldn't let people do things that are going to physically and mentally harm them in the long run if that is the biggest possibility. Now, a full-grown adult, I have absolutely no issue with a full-grown adult doing whatever a full-grown adult wants to do. Anybody can do whatever they please, as long as they are grown up enough to make that decision and emotionally mature enough to know exactly how this is going to make them feel, to know how they feel in the moment and how whatever change they are making is going to make them feel. If you are emotionally mature enough to make these types of decisions and know what the outcome is going to be and know that you are going to be all the better for it, then the power to you. But if you are not either emotionally or mentally mature enough to do those things and be able to understand, then I don't think that you should be able to have that type of decision over your body. I'm sorry, but it's at a certain point, my body, my choice shouldn't really my body, my choice should always be a thing. But at a certain point, when it comes to certain things, it should be down to a doctor's decision, really. An actual respectable doctor. who is actually going to look into this person's mental health to determine, okay, this is what's going to be best for this person, and make sure that moving forward, this isn't going to affect them in a negative way. Which should be every single doctor in the world's top priority, but for some reason it isn't, and their top priority tends to be money. So, what the fuck ever? What do I know? I'm just an idiot. Sit. So that's what our that's what tax dollars went to in Minnesota. The abuse of a nonverbal disabled youngin. Because I'm sorry, but that is nonverbal. The only word that I heard clearly was yay. That young boy is nonverbal, or that young girl. I don't know what to say. I want to respect their pronouns, but at the same time, I feel like this is abuse. I'm sorry, but I do. And if you look at how accurate the communication equipments and stuff were, let's see here. If you were to look at how accurate the communication equipment and stuff was for all of the there are videos of people who are non-disabled using the communication devices the same way that a person with cerebral palsy would be using them. They track your eyes so that you could look at pictures and letters and numbers and stuff and try to communicate. Not only is it almost impossible to get that much of an in-depth conversation with one of the it actually breaks my heart. It really does. Because not only is it next to impossible to get that much of an in-depth conversation with one of those, but it is very obvious the way that the language and stuff is being used by this person. They are obviously intellectually disabled. They are obviously developmentally disabled. There's a very, very good chance that they are extremely intelligent, but they definitely have an emotional regulation, and this is abuse. That's exactly what this is. This is abuse towards a disabled person. This is disabled people's abuse that was done by this person's caretaker and by their mother. And I don't really know what else to think about it. Like I say, there is a low possibility that is not what's going on. There is a very high possibility that that's what is going on. There's a low possibility, it's not a very good one, that is not what's happening here. And I hope to God that isn't what's happening here. But if I'm being completely honest, that's exactly what it looks like to me. And I don't know what else to think other than, why would anybody do this to their baby? When I'm looking at this story, Micaiah's mother did this to him. His mother and father and all of the people around him convinced him that this is the reality, and they did this. They put this young person through a surgery that they shouldn't have been put through, and put them through unneeded pain. For what? considering, like, honestly, it could even be something that they could change their mind on in a few years. And people who have that developmental delay are typically a few years behind. Like, I have an older cousin. She is a beautiful, wonderful, amazing human being. Her name is Winter. And she is severely disabled. And it's developmental delay, CP, bone structure, everything. Like, it's all there. And she is never, ever, ever going to be older than 3 years old in her brain. Now, that is an extreme case. But there are also less extreme cases where this person could be like 8 or 9 years less in development than they should be, and they're still extremely intelligent. But there's also the possibility that the reason that they're getting straight A's in their college courses, and that the reason that all of these things are happening, is because the people around them are doing the work for them, for one, because that is a big thing that happens with a lot of kids and their parents. Their parents tend to do the schoolwork for them. If they're... Yeah, that does happen. I'm sorry, but it really does. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I really, really do. But even if this person is only like 6 to 8 years behind in their brain development compared to what they should be, this is still disabled abuse. This is still somebody who is cognitively and emotionally not mature enough to be able to fully make these decisions. They can't even properly communicate with their voice. And those communication devices that they use aren't always accurate. And there's not a great chance that you're going to be able to get into a very decently structured, in-depth conversation with one of those. That would be an extremely difficult feat for somebody without a disability that can affect the way that their eyes move, let alone somebody with CP who can have one of the symptoms as it affects where their eyes go. And a part of those communication devices is vision tracking. So there are some things that we have to understand about this. There are some things that we are never going to understand about this. And like I say, there's a very low chance that this could be just a typical case of a trans person, and they're just not your average trans person. There is a very good chance that this could be really what's going on, and this is all Micaiah's decision. But there's also a very large possibility that that is not what's happening. And if that is not what's happening, then I have a problem with it. Okay? That's all I have to say on this one. Anyways, thank you for watching the stream. Please like the video if you like the video. Please subscribe if you have not yet subscribed. Please dislike the video if you dislike the video. But honestly, I would love it if you would tell me why you dislike it in the comments. I love you guys. Please take care of yourselves. Love yourselves. Make sure that you are drinking enough water. Make sure that you are eating enough. And make sure that everything that you do in your life is something that's going to make you happy. And something that's going to make everybody around you happy. And just remember, I love all of you guys, and I will see your beautiful faces in the next video.